全国翻译专业资格水平考试指定教材，英语口译综合能力2级，外文出版社独家出版发行，版权所有，翻录必究。
Unit 1. A World in Action. Section 1. Listening Comprehension. 1. Listen to the following passages and then decide whether the following statements are true or false.
1. In an age where there is more information available than ever before, we may end up being one of the least informed people in recent history, content with sitting by a computer or cell phone texting some inane personal comment about a non-existent story while the world goes up in flames around us.
2. Russia grabbed the headlines last month by planting a flag on the ocean bed to dramatize its claim under the UN law of the sea to oil and mineral rights beneath a large part of the ocean. Other nations surrounding the ocean are equally determined to grab a slice of the action.
3. Although people cannot choose their parents or slow down the march of years, they can do a great deal to reduce their risk of atherosclerosis, first and foremost by adopting a healthy lifestyle. Avoid being overweight. Follow a prudent diet and incorporate physical activity into your daily life, as this helps you avoid disorders of the blood fats, development of diabetes or prediabetes, and the onset or aggravation of high blood pressure. Moreover, do not smoke or stop if you do.
4. The U.S. Department of Agriculture banned Canadian beef in May after mad cow disease turned up in a single calf there. Now it is America's turn. More than 30 countries have banned U.S. beef imports since the disease was detected in a slaughtered 6-year-old in Washington state on December 23rd.
5. Gordon Brown has not been short of crises since becoming Prime Minister, with everything from incompetent terrorist plots to record-breaking floods to contend with. The most recent began on August 3rd, when cows at a farm near Guildford in southern England tested positive for foot and mouth disease, a contagious and debilitating sickness that mainly affects cloven-hooved animals.
6. The old utopian dream that the Internet would undermine the very notion of the nation-state belongs in the dustbin of history. The reality is rather more mundane. The sorts of disagreements that characterize other global issues such as trade, the environment, and human rights are now migrating to the network as the Internet becomes part of the fabric of everyday life.
7. Today's vehicles bear little resemblance to the shaky craft flown at Kitty Hawk on December 17, 1903, by Wilbur and Orville Wright. New craft have broken the sound barrier, mastered vertical takeoff and landing, and visited the moon.
8. The dollar has been weakening, even as America's economy has been picking up sharply. At the start of this week, it fell after an upbeat assessment by the Federal Reserve. The Fed said that it would keep interest rates unchanged and that they would not rise for a considerable period.
9. The fear of currency crises and the subsequent unemployment, bankruptcies, and stalling of economic growth have made many developing countries' government even more wary about the free flow of capital than they are about free trade. Freely flowing capital can indeed be destabilizing. So-called hot money, portfolio flows that can reverse direction at lightning speed, can send currencies spiraling up or down and play havoc with economic management.
10. Important shifts in public values have progressively broadened the scope of agricultural research to include goals related to the environment, human health, and communities. Changing public values and needs will create new market opportunities and will alter agriculture's relationship to the food and fiber system, the environment, and the fabric of American society.
2. Choose the one answer that best fits the meaning of the statement you have heard.
1. Oil markets appear more mysterious than they are. The details of the oil business are very complex. The various grades of oil, the complicated contracts used to buy oil and hedge against volatility, and the benchmarks that are used to negotiate prices. But few of those details matter for a discussion of the links between oil and foreign policy. Oil companies care about those details because they are trying to earn a profit on each individual contract. But national policy depends only on the general availability and overall price of oil.
2. Some psychologists propose sending an all-female crew to Mars. Even if women become irritable, they are less likely to commit suicide or murder each other than men are. Others think a mixed team would support each other better. But that, as the European experiment may demonstrate, raises the possibility of the first human Martian. Perhaps it would be better to stick to more psychologically robust and less libidinous space explorers, robots.
3. Terrorists are less inclined to seek the newest or most sophisticated method of attack than to fall back on pragmatic solutions. The car bomb has been a part of British life longer than the Internet. Since 1970, terrorists of one stripe or another have deployed at least 756 vehicle bombs around the world. According to research conducted for Time by the U.S. National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism at the University of Maryland.
4. Since its publication in France in May, Douglas Kennedy's The Woman in the Fifth has sold more than 200,000 copies and dominated bestseller lists. The novel will enjoy similar success when it appears in a dozen other countries over the next few months. That's an easy prediction to make because A, like the American author's 6 previous novels, this one is brisk, brainy, and enjoyable, and B, each of those titles has sold at least 500,000 copies worldwide.
5. These days, female sports are more competitive than they have ever been, and with higher stakes have come more hazardous consequences. Boys who play football are still more likely to suffer concussions than any athletes. But in some sports played by both sexes, girls actually run a higher risk of getting hurt. According to a new study in the Journal of Athletic Training, U.S. female high school soccer athletes suffered almost 40% more concussions than males did. In high school basketball, female concussions were nearly 240% higher. Female college athletes who play soccer, basketball, softball, and hockey also bear higher concussion risks than their male counterparts.
6. After 2 years of preparatory talks, this week's first round of the United Nations World Summit on the Information Society should not have been contentious. Rather than demonstrate a harmony of global interconnectedness, however, the conference revealed serious divisions in the way governments of rich and poor nations think about the Internet.
7. During the mid-1990s, when coffee prices soared, Vietnamese farmers planted coffee bushes with abandon. In a decade, the country grew from the world's 16th biggest exporter to the second, helping to create a worldwide coffee glut in the process.
Eight, financial systems can be liberalized a lot without letting in hot money. If a government opens up to investment from abroad, allowing foreign banks to buy local institutions, say, or allowing domestic banks to raise money on international capital markets, local banks can lend more to businesses large and small. This matters because bank credit is often the only source of finance for many firms. The downside is that banks may become overeager and make loans on which the returns do not justify the risks. That can produce horrible busts.
9. The demands for research to support national needs in continued productivity gains, more and varied products, better human health in terms of nutritional outcomes, and reductions in foodborne disease, enhanced biosecurity, animal welfare, environmental benefits, and viable rural communities are growing at the same time as scientific advances offer new opportunities for satisfaction of these demands.
Ten. The new vision promotes agriculture as a positive economic, social, and environmental force. It embraces further gains in food and fiber production, gains that will be crucial to meet the needs of an expanding U.S. and global population. But it also provides other benefits, such as enhanced public health, clean water, more diverse wildlife, rural amenities, and social well-being.
Section 2. Reading. Rebuilding valuable soil. Prompts. Perhaps the soil underneath our feet is the most common and often neglected thing on earth except the air. Yet these days it is as important to protect the soil as protect the air. The article introduces methods of soil conservation and efforts made in America, Africa, and Asia to protect the soil from erosion, desertification, overgrazing, and other forms of soil degradation. The 1930s Dust Bowl that threatened to turn America's Great Plains into a vast desert was a traumatic experience that led to revolutionary changes in the nation's agricultural practices, including the planting of tree shelter belts, rows of trees planted beside fields, and strip cropping, the planting of wheat on alternate strips with fallowed land each year. Strip cropping permits soil moisture to accumulate on the fallowed strips, while the alternating planted strips reduce wind speed and hence erosion on the idled land. Terracing, a time-tested method for dealing with water erosion, is common in rice paddies throughout the mountainous regions of Asia. On less steeply sloping land, contour strip farming, as found in the American Midwest, works well. Another utensil in the soil conservation toolkit, and a relatively new one, is conservation tillage, which includes both no-till and minimum tillage. In addition to reducing erosion, this practice helps retain water, raises soil carbon content, and reduces the energy needed for crop cultivation. Instead of plowing land, disking or harrowing it to prepare the seedbed, and then using a mechanical cultivator to control weeds, farmers simply drill seeds directly through crop residues into undisturbed soil, controlling weeds with herbicides. In the U.S., where farmers were required to implement a soil conservation plan on erodible cropland to be eligible for commodity price supports, the no-till area went from 7 million hectares in 1990 to 25 million in 2004. Now widely used in the production of corn and soybeans, no-till has spread throughout the Western Hemisphere, covering 24 million hectares in 2004 in Brazil, 18 million in Argentina, and 13 million in Canada. Australia, with 9 million hectares, rounds out the 5 leading no-till countries. Algeria, trying to halt the northward advance of the Sahara Desert, announced in December 2000 that it is concentrating its orchards and vineyards in the southern part of the country, hoping that these perennial plantings will halt the desertification of its cropland. In July 2005, the Moroccan government, responding to severe drought, announced that it was allocating $778 million to cancel farmers' debts and to convert cereal-planted areas into less vulnerable olive and fruit orchards. There are similar concerns about the expanding Sahara on the southern edge of the desert as well. Nigeria has proposed planting a Great Green Wall of trees, a band 5 kilometers wide stretching 7,000 kilometers across Africa, in an effort to halt the desert's advance. Senegal, which is on the western end of this proposed wall and is losing 50,000 hectares of productive land each year, strongly supports the idea. In Inner Mongolia, efforts to halt the advancing desert and to reclaim the land for productive uses rely on planting desert shrubs to stabilize the sand dunes. In many situations, sheep and goats have been banned entirely. In Helin County, south of the provincial capital of Hohhot, the planting of desert shrubs on abandoned cropland has stabilized the soil on the country's first 7,000-hectare reclamation plot. Based on this success, the reclamation effort is being expanded. The Helin County strategy centers on replacing the large number of sheep and goats with dairy cattle, increasing the number of these animals from 30,000 in 2002 to 150,000 by the end of 2007. The cattle are kept in enclosed areas, feeding on corn stalks, wheat straw, and the harvest from a drought-tolerant forage crop resembling alfalfa, which is grown on reclaimed land. Local officials estimate that this program will double incomes within the country during this decade. To relieve pressure on China's rangelands, Beijing is asking herders to reduce their flocks of sheep and goats by 40%. In communities where wealth is measured in livestock numbers and where most families are living in poverty, such cuts are not easy or, indeed, likely, unless alternative livelihoods are offered pastoralists among the lines proposed in Helin County. The only viable way to eliminate overgrazing on the 2/5 of the Earth's land surface classified as rangeland is to reduce the size of flocks and herds. Not only do the excessive numbers of cattle, particularly sheep and goats, remove the vegetation, but their hoofs pulverize the protective crust of soil that is formed by rainfall, and that checks wind erosion. In some situations, the only viable option is to keep the animals in enclosures, bringing the forage to them. India, which successfully has adopted tills practice for its thriving dairy industry, is the model for other countries. Protecting the Earth's remaining vegetation also warrants a ban on the clear cutting of forests in favor of selective harvesting, as, with each clear cut, there are heavy soil losses until the forest regenerates. Thus, with each subsequent cutting, productivity declines further. Restoring the Earth's tree and grass cover protects soil from erosion, reduces flooding, and sequesters carbon. It is one way we can restore the Earth so that it can support our children and grandchildren.